Hello, I'm Janine Turner, founder of Constituting America. Welcome to our annual academic study entitled History Holds the Key to the Future. Or as Shakespeare said, what's past is prologue. This year's study is entitled The Genius of America, A Journey into Our Republic, a study on Alexis De Tocqueville's Democracy in America. This essay is based on the chapter General Survey of the Subject, Volume 2, Part 4, Chapter 8, pages 673 through 676. General View of the Subject by Dr. Elizabeth Amato. In the final chapter of Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville says that he has one task left: to provide a summative judgment on how democracy, or the equality of conditions, will help or hinder, quote, the lot of man, end quote. In doing so, he provides a robust account of democratic greatness and offers cautious hope for the future of democracy. Before giving his opinion, de Tocqueville hesitates. He says, quote, I feel my sight becoming blurred and my reason wavering, end quote. He is less confident about this final remaining task. What prompts this circumspection? New democratic societies, de Tocqueville points out, are, quote, only being born, end quote. And so, quote, time has not yet fixed its form, end quote. Here, de Tocqueville revisits and gently revises a metaphor he used at the beginning of his book, in which he compared newborns and nations. There he boasted that the best way to understand the habits, passions, and characteristics of a man's maturity was to study him as a child. The whole man was, quote, in the swaddling clothes of his cradle, end quote. Likewise, nations also feel the effect of their origins. The problem that de Tocqueville admits here is that if the, quote, whole, end quote, is contained in the beginning, then there's no room for human freedom to play a role. To some extent, the future of democracy is open-ended. Much will depend on what Americans choose to do. The character of American democracy could be resentful and small-minded, or it could be generous and magnanimous. It will be up to particular peoples and statesmen to pursue the advantages and resist the weaknesses of democracy. The principal effect of democracy on society, de Tocqueville observes, is to reduce all extremes. Most people will be of the, quote, middling, end quote, sort in terms of wealth, fortune, education, arts, and ambition. Most people will be lifted up, but at the cost of lowering the few at the top. The rise of democracy means less individual excellence, but less cruelty and injustice. Education will be more widely diffused throughout the population. Manners and mores will be, quote, mild, end quote, and, quote, legislation humane, end quote. De Tocqueville makes a confession. He laments this brave new world in which humanity is an, quote, innumerable crowd, end quote, of mediocrity. He regrets the passing of aristocratic brilliance. He recognizes that his view is partial and that it is a, quote, weakness, end quote. In order to correct his limited point of view, de Tocqueville adopts the perspective of God, whom he credits as being able to see, quote, the whole human race in each man, end quote. From this divine vantage, de Tocqueville says that democracy is more just, and, quote, its justice makes for its greatness and its beauty, end quote. The grandeur and nobility of aristocracy that delights de Tocqueville personally, he concedes, comes at the expense of justice. In a democracy, more people get what they merit. Moreover, it is enough for democratic peoples to strive, quote, to be honest and prosperous, end quote. De Tocqueville turns to consider what should be done. In his own time, reactionaries against democracy and liberalism out of nostalgia strove to preserve aristocracy and inequality. Aristocracy, he firmly says, is not coming back. The political goal, de Tocqueville says, isn't to cling to the benefits that aristocracy produced, but to pivot to, quote, securing the new goods that equality, end quote, offers. De Tocqueville's moderate and humane liberalism teaches the weaknesses of democracy, not to scorn democracy, but in order to guard against them and to obtain the benefits that equality of conditions makes possible. As he prudently advises, quote, we ought not to strive to make ourselves like our fathers, but strive to attain the kind of greatness and happiness that is proper to us, end quote. De Tocqueville is, quote, full of fears and full of hopes, end quote, for the future of democracy. Rival ideologies to democracy will emerge that will introduce new and brutal justifications for inequality. With great prescience, de Tocqueville warns against pseudo-scientific justifications for the superiority or inferiority of peoples based on history, race, and ethnicity, and geography. He warns his readers against such doctrines and calls them, quote, false and cowardly, end quote. These ideologies will not mark a return to the brilliance and nobility of aristocracy. Rather, they will produce, quote, weak men and pusillanimous nations, end quote, as the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century and various racial supremacy doctrines demonstrate. De Tocqueville saves his best argument for democracy for the very end. Democracy is not only more just, but more accurately mirrors the human condition. Aristocracy is based on an exaggeration of human freedom for a very few, an exaggeration of human dependence for the many. The truth is in the middle. Individuals as well as nations and peoples are caught in the middle, neither wholly free nor wholly dependent. Every person lives within a, quote, fatal circle, end quote, but that circle is expansive. De Tocqueville says, quote, within its vast limits, man is powerful and free, end quote. It is up to individuals and nations to reach for the greatness within their grasp. This essay was written by Elizabeth Amato. Elizabeth Amato earned her BA at Berry College and her MA and PhD at Baylor University in political science. She is the author of The Pursuit of Happiness and the American Regime, Political Theory in Literature, Lexington Books 2018. She is currently an associate professor of political science and international affairs at Gardner-Webb University.